Hi guys, it's Keely here. Today my experiment is about buoyancy. So here's my title page. It's called the Salty Egg Experiment. Okay, here's my abstract page. The purpose of me doing this experiment was to see if putting an egg in salt water makes the egg float. So the ability of something like the egg to float in water or some other liquid is known as buoyancy, so that's a definition to get a better understanding of that. Here's my introduction and history page, which has all of our facts that we could have looked up and different things. Most of my facts came out of our science book here, so that was one of my resources. So got a lot of good information in there. The theory is when putting an egg in a cup of water, it will sink because the density of the egg is higher than the density of the water, okay? But when enough salt is added to the tap water, the saltwater solution's density becomes higher than the eggs, which will allow the egg to float. Here was my setup. Here, got my salt and my 2 glasses of water and my eggs and my tablespoon. Okay. Here's my independent variable, dependent variable, and constants. The independent variable was the amount of salt in the water. The dependent variable was the egg floats due to the salt in the water. And the constant is the amount of water and the temperature of the water. Here is my data collection. To explain this chart, I used these numbers as how many tablespoons of salt that it took. And the percentages over here is the amount of buoyancy that's happening. So, for example, on my last, on 3 tablespoons here, it reached 100% because that was how many tablespoons it took to get the egg to float. On this slide here, this was my experiment explanation. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but you kind of have to. The data was based off of how much salt I had to use in order to get the egg to float. I ran the different trials, and it actually took 3 tablespoons of salt to have the egg float. Here's my data analysis page. This basically just tells how many tablespoons it took to float again. 3. Yep. Percentage differences and sources of error. The percentages show how the egg reacts to the amount of salt added to the water. The percentages show the level of buoyancy, like I described in the last couple slides. Most likely you will have a source of error in any science project. I had to do many trials before I got it right. As you can see, the salt on my table. I don't know if you can see it or not. Here's my conclusion and references. In conclusion, the density of the egg is higher than the density of the tap water it sinks. When enough salt is added to the water, the saltwater solution's density becomes higher than the eggs, so the egg will begin to float. My hypothesis in the beginning actually was that I didn't think the egg would float. I didn't think it would work. But when I did the experiment, it actually floated, so proved myself wrong on that one. And here is my resources for the project. And with me, I actually have my experiment, so I'm going to show you guys. I don't know if it's a very clear picture here, but we'll work with it. Okay, so here's my regular egg and a regular cup of water. I'll go ahead and put that in there. See how it sinks down to the bottom? So there's that. Now, I'm going to begin to add my salt into the regular water. And it's 3 tablespoons is what it took. So, here we go. There's my second. And here's the last one. Okay, now we're going to mix it up real good. Here goes putting the egg in the salt water. I don't know if you can see, but the egg is floating and it's sitting right on top. I can pull it closer so you guys can get a better look. So here's the first one that is down at the bottom laying. And the second one is just floating right on top there.